we do that in hockey because, these players get $8 million a year and they've scored 16 goals. So people say, okay, that's $500,000 per goal. Like that was interesting, Right. Meg, will you do the honor of announcing? Will you do my page numbers for me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Service begins on page 65. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'tzvi bina le'abchim ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abi sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokar salamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasali kotzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otei Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layayev koha.
You may be seated.
Let's move on. Uhutnenu hayom v'chol yom l'chenu l'chased u'rachamim beinecha v'nei koro'enu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael yehi ratzon milfanecha. Shrenu matov chelkenu u'mana'im goralenu u'mayafe yerushatenu. Shrenu shanachnu mashkimim u'ma'rivim erev avoker v'omrim pamayim b'chol yom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. Kadesh et shemcha al makdeshe shemecha v'kadesh et shemcha b'olamecha v'shodcha tarim v'tagbi arkanenu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh et shemcha barabim.
Service continues on page 81.
Mizmor shir Chanukat habayit l'David. Hafachta misbiri lamacholi pitata saki v'tazreni simcha laman yisamacha kavod v'lo yidom Adonai Elohai leolam ohodeka. We rise on page 83. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch hu Baruch oseh v'reishit Baruch omer v'oseh Baruch ozer u'mekayim Baruch mirachem al ha'aretz Baruch mirachem al habriot Baruch mishalem sachar tov lire'ahav Baruch hayla'ad v'kayam lanetzach Baruch podeh u'matzil Baruch Shemo. Yahachid Heolamim Melech Meshubach Umfe Ade Ad Shemo Hagadol Baruch atah Adonai Melech Mehula Batishpacho.
You may be seated.
Hodul Adonai Kiru Shmo. Kol Elohim Elilim Adonai Shamayim Asam. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu, Vishtachavu lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, v'hu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchi. Adonai tzvaot, ashrei adam poteach ba'ach, Adonai Hashem melech yanenu v'yom kareinu, hoshia et amecha. ואני בחסדך בטחתי, יגיע ליבי בשועתך, אשיר לאדוני כי גמל הלהר.
Service continues on page 91.
הללויה, הללו את שם אדוני, הללו עבדי אדוני. בית ישראל ברכו את אדוני, בית אהרון ברכו את אדוני, בית הלוי ברכו את אדוני, יראי אדוני ברכו את אדוני, ברוך אדוני מציון, שוכן ירושלים, הללויה.
Please rise.
הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאלוהי אלוהים, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאדוני אדונים, כי לעולם חסדו. נותן לחם לכל בשר, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאל השמיים, כי לעולם חסדו.
You may be seated.
רננו צדיקים באדוני לשרים נבא תהילה. נפשנו חיכתה לאדוני, עזרנו מגינם הוא, כי בו ישמח ליבנו כי בשם קודשו בטחנו, יהי חסדך אדוני עלינו, ואשר ייחלנו לך, מזמור של יום השבת. ודינוהם בשיבה דשנים רעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא אבלהת בו. מקולות מים רבים, עדותיך נמנו מאוד, לביתך נבע קודש אדוני לאורך ימים. והוא רחום יחרבון ולא ישחית, וירבה להשיבה פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קראנו. אשרי יושבי ביתך, הודיעו לך שלום. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד ואנחנו נברך ימי אתה ויד עולם הללויה הללויה הללי נפשי את אדוני. אדוני שומר את גרים, יתום והבנה, יודד בדרך רשעים יאבד, ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. הרופא לשבורי לב ומחדש לעצבותם. מגיד דבריו ליעקב, חוקיו ומשפטיו לישראל, לא עשה כן לכל גוי, ומשפטים בל ידעום, הללויה. הללויה, הללו את אדוני מן השמיים, הללו במרומים. וירם קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו, הללויה. הללויה, שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, תהילתו בקהל חסידים. ואסור מלכיכם בזיקים ונכבדיהם בחבלי ברזל, לעשות בהם משפט כתוב, הדר הוא לכל חסידיו, הללויה. הללויה, הללו אל בקודשו, הללו ברכיה עוזו. הללו, הללו, וצלצלי שמה. הללו, הללו, בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללויה, הללויה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללויה, הללויה, ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן. ברוך אדוני אלוהים אלוהי ישראל, עושה נפלא לבדו, ברוך שם כבודו לעולם, וימלא כבודו את כל הארץ, אמן ואמן.
Please rise.
ויברך דוד את אדוני לעיני כל הקהל. גבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד. אתה הוא אדוני האלוהים אשר בחרת באברהם, הוצאתו מאור כספים ושמת שמו אברהם ומצאת את לבבו נאמן לפניך. והים בקעת לפניהם ויעברו בתוך הים ויבשה, ואת רודפיהם השלכת במצולות כמו אבן במים עזים, ויושע אדוני ביום ההוא את ישראל. וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו, אז ישיר משה בני ישראל את אשר. עזיב וזמרת יד, ויהי לי לשובעה. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Ki l'Adonai hamlucha Moshe bagoyim, v'alu Moshim behar Tzion lishpot et har Esav. Vayata l'Adonai hamlucha, v'ya Adonai l'melech kol haaretz, v'yom hahu yadonai echad u'shemo echad.
You may be seated.
Nishmat kol chai, tzivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Adhena zaronu rachamnecha, v'osavonu chasadecha, v'yatichenu Adonai Eloheinu lanetzach. V'halecha shebecha anfa'ercha, unvarech et shem kodshecha, ka'amor leDavid. Barchi nafshi et Adonai, v'chol keravai et shem kodsheho. Ha'el b'tatzumot uzecha, hagadol b'chvod shemecha, hagibor lanetzach v'nora b'norotecha, ha'melech hayoshev, al kisei raham v'nisan.
Our service continues in the middle of page 105 as Eileen Freed takes the place for Shacharit.
שוכן עד מהרום וקדוש שמו. בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, לעולל, לקלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו.
Please rise.
ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברה קריאותי וימלך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ליומי יומיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך והכל ישבחוך. אין כרך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך, מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גדלו וטובו, מלא עולם דעת ותבונה, סובבים אותו. המיקאל חיית הקודש, ונהדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת, בבינה ובהשכל, כוח וברורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוקה, נאה זיום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים ביהם הרצון קונם. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש ויזרח אור, ראה והתקין צורת הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים בחיות הקודש. לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים. תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו, בורא קדושים משתבח שמך. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים וכולם עושים באימה וביראה רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ובטהרה, בשירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים, ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול. להקדיש ליותרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ובנעימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. והאופנים בחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. לאל ברוך נעימות ייתנו למלך. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, 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 ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ויתרה חמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו תלמדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועת אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלה, באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, יציב בנחום וקיים בישר. לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וכיסו נכון, ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת, ודבריו חיים וקיימים. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו, יוצרנו צור ישועתנו, פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם. Tehilot Le'el Elyon, Baruch Hu Mevorach, Moshe V'nei Yisrael, Lecha Anu Shira B'Simcha Rabba, V'yamru Chulam, Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Kamocha Nedar B'Kodesh, Nora Tehilot, Osef Eleh, Shira Chadasha, Shibchu Geulim L'Shimcha Al Sfat Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Hodu V'Himlichu V'Amru, Adonai Imloch Leolam Ba'ed, Tzor Yisrael, Kuma B'Ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechinu Mecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael, go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
115b and forward, silent prayer. For those still davening, please continue as the rest of us rise on 115b for the repetition.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chastei Avot, U'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava. Melech Ozer Fokedu Moshiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Metim Atah Rab LaHoshia מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים לי מצרפים לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. בעינינו תראנה, תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. בעינינו תראנה, תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. על ידי דוד משיח צדקך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We may be seated. We're on 117.
ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, במתנת חלקו. כי עבד נאמן, כי עבד נאמן, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו. כי עבד נאמן, כי עבד נאמן, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו. ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, במתנת חלקו. כליל תפארת בראשו נתת, ויעמדו לפניך על הר סיני, ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת. ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, ישמח משה במתנת, במתנת חלקו. וכן כתוב בתורתך, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לגויי הארצות, ולא הנחלתו מלכנו לעובדי פסילים, וגם במנוחתו לא ישכנו ערלים. כי לישראל עמך נתתו באהבה, לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת. עם מקדשי שביעי, כולם יספו, וייתנו מטובך. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבקודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל בתפילתם, והשב את העבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, והמרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך יתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד, וכל החיים יודוך סלע, והללו את שמך באמת, האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, ברכנו בברכה המשולשת בתורה, הכתובה על ידי משה עבדך, האמורה מפי אהרון ובניו כהנים, עם קדושך כאמור. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. כן יהי. שים שלום, שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, חיים וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל ישראל עמך, ברכנו אבינו כולנו ואחד באור פניך, אור פניך. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, תורת חיים ואהבת חסד וצדקה, ברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
138.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברה קראתי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לעולמי עד. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן תתקבל סלוטון ובאו תהום תכל ישראל קודם אבוהון דבשמיא ויאמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן היום יום שבת קודש צדיקתה מהר יפרח כארז בלבנון יזכה שתולים בבית אדוני בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו עוד ינובו בסבע דשנים ברעננים יהיו להגיד כי אשר אדוני צורי צורי ולא עוולתה בו.
Eileen leads the Mourner's Kaddish. We're on page 82. For those reciting the Kaddish today, you are standing.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויאמן דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Parsha of Eikev today, and welcome to those who are streaming, and it's so good to see everyone who's also in the room of God today. The Torah service will begin on page 139. We're trying something a little different today. What did they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. So this microphone is temperamental lately. And so we're actually only using our condenser microphone. And it's interesting because it seems to be working very, very well. And especially for people who are streaming, which we're very mindful of the experience because we want you to be able to connect to God and connect to us. And so, Beth Jarvis warned me. So this is, Gary, Eileen, just be forewarned, Meg. They're saying it's so good. It picks up people in the front row or two. And I think that's great for people who are streaming because they're like, that's what Meg is telling the rabbi. That's what Gary is telling Eileen. So gives them more of the real congregational experience. So so that's why this one's being turned away today, and actually gives us a chance, just because of circumstance, to see what this is like. And so I just wanted to let you know that that if you see me move around that microphone, that's the reason. And I wanted to give you fair warning in the front rows. We're on page 139. I'll invite up Peter that we'll get underway with the Torah service.
En kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai ve'en kamasecha malkutecha malkut kol olamim umemshaltecha be'kol dor ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amot ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו השלום. אף הרחמים, היטיבה ברצון לציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, ויקיץ אהרון ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני וינוסו בשמחה יברך כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, מירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה, לעמו ישראל, בקדושתו.
140.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad Eloheinu, Adonai 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 Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Adonai Shemo. Adonai Elohim, Shemo Yadav. Adonai Hatitu, Ram Tiferet, Ve'Hanetzach Ve'Hod.
השמיים ובארץ, בכל השמיים ובארץ. אדוני אלוהיך, יתנשא לכל ראש, רוממות, והשתחוו, רוממות, רוממות, אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש, כי קדוש, כי קדוש, אדוני אלוהינו. And we may be seated. Thank you. I'm going to save my comments on the parasha for the Devar Torah later. So I commend to you the reading, which will be on page 1048 of the Eitz Chaim. So in the Chumash 1048, for those following another text, we're in chapter 10 of Devarim. We're beginning with verse 12. And I guess I'll get a second gabbai. Ben, are you reading? Would you come up and give my second gabbai then? If there's a second gabbai, like I was waiting to do it, and you completely ignored me. So if I insulted you, you're on for the next 3 second gabbais. And I am the first aliyah. Do you have the spot? I should tell you. Making sure we're in chapter 10, verse 12. And so we are V'ata Yisrael, Ma Adonai. Do you have it? There we go. So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'll do it anyway. The Kohen is karaving Mod Harav Nadav Noach Ben Devora Harav Yitzchak HaKohen Baruch Shenatan Torah Mosel Bikdushato V'yatem Hadvekim B'Adonai Elohechem B'Hayim Kulachem Hayom Baruch et Adonai Amorach Baruch Adonai Vorach Lulam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim V'Natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ve'ata Yisrael Adonai Elohecha shoel mi'imah ki im lir'a et Adonai Elohecha lelechet b'chol darkav לעבוד את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך, לשמור את מצוות אדוני ואת חוקותיו אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לטוב לך. הן לאדוני אלוהיך השמיים ושמי השמיים, הארץ וכל אשר בה, רק באבותיך חשק אדוני לאהבה אותם, ויבחר בזרעם אחריהם בכם מכל העמים כיום הזה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
יום הזה.
Perfect. And so for our Levi or Bat Levi, Yofi. Ta'amod, Malka, Bat Liev, Halevi, V'chaya. We are a Bat Levi.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach, Olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Verses 16 through 22. Malta.
ומלתם, אמן, ומלתם, את העלה לבבכם, באפכם, לא תקשו עוד, כי אדוני אלוהיכם הוא אלוהי אלוהים, ואדוני אדונים, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אשר לא יישא פנים ולא ייקח שוחד, עושה משפט יתום, ואלמנה, ואוהב גר, לתת לו לחם ושמלה, ואהבתם את הגר, כי גרים הייתם בארץ מצרים, את אדוני אלוהיך תראה אותו, תעבוד, ובוא תדבק בשמו, תשבע, ובשמו תשבע, ותהי לך והוא אלוהיך, אשר עשה איתך את הגדולות ואת הנוראות האלה, אשר ראו עיניך, ו70 נפש ידעו אבותיך מצרימה, ואתה שמך אדוני אלוהיך ככופי השמיים לארץ.
We keep the spot.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Natan Torah Emet V'chai Olam Natan B'chukenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yeshar Kocheh. And Mira comes up for the third Aliyah. We're beginning chapter 11, and we're on page 1050 of the Eitz Chaim. Ya'amod. Hebrew name. Yaakov ben Jeff Hashlishi.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Can we hold this?
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך ושמרת משמרתו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו ומצוותיו כל הימים וידעתם היום כי לא את בניכם אשר לא ידעו ואשר לא ראו את מוסר אדוני אלוהיכם את גדלו, את ידו החזקה וזרועו הנטויה, ואת אותותיו ואת מעשיו, אשר עשה בתוך מצרים, לפרעה מלך מצרים ולכל ארצו, ואשר עשה לחיל מצרים, לחיל מצרים, לסוסיו ולרוחבו, אשר הציב את מי ים סוף על פניהם ברדפם אחריכם, ויעבדם אדוני עד היום הזה, ואשר עשה לכם במדבר עד בואכם עד המקום הזה, ואשר עשה לדותן ולאבירם את בני אליאב בן ראובן, אשר פצתה הארץ את פיה, וטיב להם את בתיהם ואת אוהליהם ואת כל היקום אשר ברגליהם בקרב כל ישראל, כי עיניכם הרואות את כל מעשה אדוני הגדול אשר עשה, ושמרתם את המצווה, את כל המצווה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום למען תחזקו, ובאתם ורשתם את הארץ אשר אתם עוברים שמה לרשתו, למען תאריכו ימים על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם לזרעם, ארץ זבת חלב
ודבש.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natav v'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And we'll keep the spot. Matt takes over, and we are in Rivi E, the fourth Aliyah. We're on 1051, starting with verse 10 of chapter 11. Ya'amod Yisrael ben Yaakov v'Leah. Yisrael ben Yaakov v'Leah le'aliyah ha-Rivi'ihit.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chavanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ki haaretz asher ata b'shamal rishta lo ke'eretz Mitzrayim hi asher yitzatem misham asher tizra et zaracha v'hishkita b'raglecha kegan hayarak v'haaretz asher atem ovrim shamal rishta eretz harim uvka'od v'mater hashamayim תשתה מים ארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך דורש אותה תמיד. הנה אדוני אלוהיך בא מראשית השנה ועד אחרית שנה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natav v'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshakoach. Ya'amod Yeshua ben Chaim ba'aliyah ha'chamishit.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Verse 13.
Amen. Amen. שמעו תשמעו על מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווכם אתכם היום לאהבה אדוני אלוהיכם ולבדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם
ובכל נפשכם.
ונתתי מטרתכם ואיתו יורה ומלכוש ואספת דגנך ותירושך ויצרך ונתתי עשב בשדך ותמתך ואכלת ושבעת.
Beautiful.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורה אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yeshakoach. Some may wonder why we're not lingering on the bima, and we kind of unofficially, when we're in the official red zone of Washtenaw, right? We switch back to our pandemic situation where we didn't linger on the bima, and then when we go back to yellow, which will probably be soon, Bezrat Hashem, we go back to lingering on the bima for those who choose to. So for those new to the service, that's like, wow, that's is that a Sephardi minhag that they don't know? No, it's a pandemic minhag. We're continuing with our shishi, and I call up our sixth aliyah at this time. Who is shishi? You may have a card that says sixth aliyah. No. Oh, we got it. Yeah. Who's our rabbinical student sleeping in the back row? Ya'amod
Eliyahu ben Kadesh.
Eliyahu ben Kadesh v'Leah la'aliyah hashishit.
ברכו אדוני מבורך.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed.
ברוך ה' מבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר ברוך בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen. Yishamru lachem, pen yitem levavachem, v'sortem, v'otem Elohim achirim, v'shtachvitem lahem, v'hara'af Adonai bachem, v'atzar et hashamayim, lo yiyem mitar, v'adamah lo titein, et ivulaha, v'otem me'ira, me'aretz hatovah, asher Adonai noten lachem, ושמתם את דברי אלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם, וקשרתם אותם להיות על ידכם, והיו לכותפות בין עיניכם, למדתם אתם את בניכם לדבר בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשעתך ובקומך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען ירבו ימיכם ומי בניכם על האדמה, אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם, לתת לכם כימי השמיים
על הארץ.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Shkoach. And our Shvi'i Ya'amod. Yosef ben Chaim, Aliyah HaShvi'it. The reading will continue chapter 11, verse 22, found on 1053 of the Eitz Chaim.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Shamor tishmarun et kol hamitzvah hazot. Asher Anochi mitzaveh etchem לעשותה לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם ללכת בכל דרכיו ולדבקה בו והוריש אדוני את כל הגויים האלה ולפניכם וירשתם גויים גדולים ועצומים מכם כל המקום אשר תדרוך כף רגליכם, ולכם יהיה מן המדבר והלבנון, מן הנהר נהר פרת, ויד הים האחרון יהיה גבולכם, לא יתייצב איש בפניכם, תחתיכם ומוראכם ייתן אדוני אלוהיכם. על פני כל הארץ אשר תדרכו בה,
אשר דיבר לכם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishar koach. This is our time for our blessing for those in need of healing. I'm going to invite Meg up for the list of everyone that people have asked us to be praying for and that we do every day during the week. And on Shabbat, she does it the Torah, as I'm at the same time taking the names from you and reading members themselves who have asked us all to pray for them directly. And here we go. Misha berach avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah u'yivarech u'virapeh et hacholim Mayim Shira bat Chaya Elisheva David ben Ava Baruch v'Gloria Sam Silver Yehuda Aharon ben Eliezer v'Tzipporah Devora Viva bat Yitzchak Esther, Judith Elkin, Azriel Shel Shlomit, Naomi Kaya bat Shlomit, Shalom Zev ben Moshe, Yefifya bat Yosef Yehudihid, Meir ben Hillel Blum Abbas, Yudo Shlama ben Avram Yitzchak Baruchel, Chaya bat Hasna Ruchel v'Shmuel David, Asher Menachem Shlomo Isaacs, Gidon, V'ehet,
Hana, but Hana, sleep, and
Overnight.
ואת כל החולים בקהילה הקדושה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, להחזיקם רפותם וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, שבת ימי לזעוק תפרה קרבה לבוא, השתה בעגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר Amen. If you don't know this, would you join me in singing on the 5th line of page 14? Ana el narifana Allah beharola noam ziva az tidchazek v'titrape v'hayeta Allah Shivchat olam Yitgada v'yikada shemeraba V'yama divra kirte v'yamlich malchute B'chayechon uv'yomechon Uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael Ba'agala v'zman kariv V'imeru Yeheshmera b'mevarach Li'alam u'lamei amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmeru Kodesha Leila min kol berchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiram v'yama v'imeru Amen. I'm going to ask Meg, right, and there we go. Ya'amon.
Binyamin ben Ephraim ve'Esther.
Binyamin ben Ephraim ve'Esther. Hamaftir. I'll announce now the maftir will be, chapter again, verses 22 through 25 on page 1053.
Baruch Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Habarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Shemur tishmarun et kol mitzvah hazot asher anochi ve'etchem la'asota li'ahava et Adonai Elohechem la'lechet b'chol derachav u'dat chavo v'horish Adonai kol ha'goyim ha'elem lefnechem
V'rishtem
goyim gedolim v'atzmim mikhem kol ha'makom asher tidro taf raglechem bolachem Yehem hamidbar v'hadvanot min hanahar nahar parah te'atayam ha'parot yehegevulchem lo yityatzeh ish b'fnechem tafechem u'mora'achem yitein Adonai Elohechem al pnei kol ha'aretz asher tilchu bach
asher diber lachem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet b'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. We call up our lifter and roller. Ya'amdu lahag bahava ligli la. Please rise. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomchem me'ushar. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomchem me'ushar. Diracheh darchei noam V'chol netivotah shalom yadadai. Darkei noam. V'chol netivotah shalom yadadai. Yadadadadadada, yadadadadada. Yadadadadadadadadadada. Yadadadadadadadadadadada. We are going to be in a moment at the Haftarah on page 1056 of the Eitz Chaim. For those in other texts, we're in Yeshayahu chapter 49, beginning with verse 15. And before Ben comes up, I want to share a continuation of last week's Devar Torah. So for those who were here last week for the Devar Torah, I talked about the interesting rabbinic, largely based on Ilana Kirshen's essay. I talked about the interesting gender constructions in the Midrash of Moshe in last week's parasha, V'et Hanan, where in some of the Midrashim, Moses is imagined as a mother who is delivering her children to the promised land and will not follow them into the land. And an interesting, the use of female sort of gender, female metaphors and gender to understand. And interestingly, much of the rabbinic midrashim and the discussions going back and forth are within trying to, and these are men writing, I understand, but trying to understand what they see as the ambivalence within what it's like to be a mother. So perhaps what they're seeing in women, and women can say whether that's accurate or not, and the way they see within the mixed emotions women have, that they're looking at Moshe this way, pardon me, that in some ways his life was taken away from him because he ended up being a mother to the Israelites, to the Bnei Yisrael. And of course, but then it was in a way the greatest honor of all to get to do that. And that the promised land in a way represented a life when the kids are grown, where a woman can either claim her life back and have a life that's hers, or some of the other rabbis say, no, it's just the opposite. All she wants to do is keep mothering. So they asked what would it have been like if Moshe had entered the promised land, whether he would have kept mothering or whether he would have been saying, wow, now I get to have a life of huge grapes and large pomegranates and I get my life back. But we don't necessarily often get these constructions of female gender. I don't know if it's appropriate that I'm drinking water and talking about women in terms of, but so today the second Haftarah of consolation comes from the anonymous prophet, largely called Deutero Isaiah. And whereas we had in, let's say, Jeremiah, who is quoted extensively in metaphor today in the Haftarah, who's saying, you Israelites, you're going to be bad and you're going to go into exile. We now have the prophet. Who is foreseeing the end of the exile and Persia defeating Babylonia, and is the prophet of comfort, saying we'll return to the land. And in it, Deutero Isaiah imagines God now as a mother, and that we don't, and as a woman, and that is, so we continue the themes, but here actually in the Tanakh itself. And so I will share just a little bit of that here. Since I see that Josh is here, I'll just have to quote from Ben Summer, professor of Bible at Jewish Theological Seminary, with whom I imagine he is having courses, and fortunate, we should all be so fortunate. And so points out that this comforting metaphor, this comforting image of God, which by the way, he raises speculatively, since we don't know who the prophet is, could potentially be a woman, highly improbable, but there are women prophets. So he just raises that fact that the language and metaphors of the anonymous prophet, Deutero Isaiah, are really very, very different, strikingly different, and perhaps in some ways the apex of prophetic language and imagery. But he points out that unusually, I quote from Benjamin Summer, unusually among biblical texts, Deutero Isaiah refers to God using not only masculine metaphors, but feminine ones as well. The reasons behind this innovation cannot be known with certainty. Perhaps the prophet's intense monotheism requires the prophet to show explicitly that God has characteristics that polytheists associate with goddesses, as well as those associated with gods. So perhaps he feels impelled to talk about God as a woman, so that we can understand that, as we know from early biblical archaeology, that God is not a male who may need a mate, let's say in Asherah or Canaanite goddesses, but God is also the female, and so it doesn't also the goddess's characteristics as well. At the same time, the feminine imagery, and especially the maternal language, Judah-Isaiah uses for God suit his prophet's focus on solace and hope, and the opening lines of today's Haftarah are a banner example. The prophet portrays Jerusalem as a woman who thinks that her husband has left her and that her children are gone forever. Zion, or Jerusalem, serves as a stand-in for the Jewish people who believe either that the God of Israel no longer loves them, or that the Israel's deity is one of many gods and has been defeated or even killed by the God of Babylon. Further, because the nation is in exile, the prophet portrays Zion not only as a rejected or widowed wife, but also as a bereaved mother. Her children have been taken away forever, destined to live in Babylon and probably to assimilate into the population there, thus ending the Jewish people's existence. Zion laments in the first verse, Adonai has abandoned me and my Lord has forgotten me. But then the prophet has God come in saying, would a woman forget her infant, forget to love the child of her womb? Even if they would forget, I never forget you. Your children come quickly, lift up your eyes and see, all of them have gathered, they're coming towards you. I am making a vow, an utterance of Adonai. Truly you will wear all of them like jewelry. You will adorn yourself with them as a bride. Whereas in the Haftarot of chastisement, Jeremiah had used a different female image, which is God is the husband and Israel is a wayward wife who remembers the jewelry that adorned her at her wedding and wonder where it's gone and would like it back. And now Isaiah flips it, which is actually God is the woman, but then God also says, you're also, so I'm a mother who would not abandon her children, but you are also a mother and your children will be your jewelry. So the children that you've been looking for will be in the restoration. So perhaps as Ben reads, pay attention to the interplay and mixing and transitioning among the gender constructions of both Israel and of God, God's self.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nevim tovim v'ratzav divreihem hame'emrim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'nevei ha'emet v'tzedek. V'atomer Tzion azavani Adonai Adonai shechechoni hatishkach isha ula mirachem ben bitna gam ela tishkachna v'anochi lo ishkachech hen al kapayim chakotich chamotayich negdi tamid miharu banayich maharsayich umacharavayich mimech yetzeu Si'i saviv einayich uri kulam nichbetzu va'ulav V'aninu Adonai ki kulam ka'adid hilbashi utkashrim kakala ki charvotayich b'shom motayich be'eretz harisutech ki ata tetzri miyoshev v'rachaku mevalayich Od yomru va'aznayich b'nei shikulayich tarli hamakom gishali ve'esheva amarta bilvaveh mi yalavi et ele
ואני שכולה וגלמודה, גולה וסורה, ואלה מי גידל, הן אני נשארתי לבדי, אלא איפה הם? כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, הנה אשא אל גויים ידי, ולעמים ערים ניסי, והביאו בנייך בחוצן, ובנותייך על כתף תנשאנה, והיו מלאכים אומנייך, ושרותיהם מניקותייך, אפיים ארץ השתחוו לך, ועפר רגלייך ילחכו, וידעתי כי אני אדוני, אשר לא יבושו כובעי. היו כך בגיבור מלכות, ועם שבי צדיק ימלט. כי כה אמר אדוני, גם שבי גיבור יוקח, מלכות אריץ ימלט. ויריבך אנוכי אריב, ובנייך אנוכי אושיע. והאכלתי את מעונייך את בשרם, וכעסיס דמם ישכרון. וידעו כל הבשר, כי אני אדוני מושיעך, וגואלך אביר יעקב. כה אמר אדוני, איזה ספר כריתות עמכם אשר שילחתיה, או מי מנושי אשר מכרתי אתכם בו, הן בעוונותיכם נמכרתם, ופשעיכם שולחה עמכם. מדוע באתי ואין איש, קראתי ואין עונה, הקצור קצרה ידי מפדות, אם אין בי כוח להציל, הן בגערתי אחריב ים, אשים נהרות מדבר, תבאש דגתם מאין מים, ותמות בצמא. אלביש שמים כדרות, ושק אשים כסותם. אדוני אלוהים נתן לי לשון לימודים לדעת, לעוט את יעף דבר, יאיר בבוקר, יאיר לי אוזן לשמוע כלמודים. אדוני אלוהים פתח לי אוזן, ואנוכי לא מריתי, אחור לא נסוגלתי. גבי נתתי למכים, וחיי למורטים. פניי לא הסתרתי מכלימות ברוק, ואדוני אלוהים יעזר לי, על כן לא נכלמתי. על כן שמתי פניי כחלמיש, ואדע כי לא אבוש. קרוב מצדיקי, מי יריב איתי נעמדה יחד, מבעל משפטי ייגש אליי. הן אדוני אלוהים יעזר לי, מיהו ירשיעני, הן כולם כבגד יבלו, אש יאכלם. מי בכם יראה אדוני, שומע בקול עבדו, אשר הלך חשכים, ונוגע לו, יפתח בשם אדוני, וישען באלוהיו. הן כולכם, קודחי אש מעזרי זיקות, לכו באור אשכם, וזיקות ביארתם, מידי הייתה זו לכם, למעצבה תשכבון. שימו אליי, רודפי צדק מבקשי אדוני, הביטו אל צור חוצבתם, ואל מרכבת פור נוכרתם. הביטו אל אברהם אביכם, ואל שרה תחוללכם, כי אחד פרטיו, ואברכהו וארבהו, כי ניחם אדוני ציון, ניחם כל חרבותיה, Vayasem midbara ke'edem v'arvata kegan Adonai. Sason v'simcha yima tzefa toda v'kol zimra. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik b'kol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber u'mekayem shekol devarav emet b'tzedek. Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davar echad midvarecha achor lo yashuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav v'achem al tzion ki hived chayenu v'alvat nefesh torshia bimhera v'yameinu baruch ata Adonai v'samech tzion b'vaneha. Samchenu Adonai Eloheinu be'Eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha Malchut Bet David Mashiachecha Bimhera Yavo V'Yagel Libeinu Al Kisor Lo Yeshev Zar V'Lo Yimchalu Od Acherim Et Kevodo Ki V'Shem Kadshecha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichbei Nevo Leolam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Magen David Al HaTorah Al HaAvodah Al HaNevi'im V'Al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu liktushav limnucha lechavod uletifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach v'orchim otach yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed baruch ata Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Yeah.
148 for Yikum Farkan. Peter returns to the
Yikum Farkan min Shemaya. Vishlach bracha v'chatzlacha b'chol maseh yedechem im kol Yisrael achem v'nomar amen.
Today is a Mivarachim HaChodesh day, so we're on page 150. I'm going to ask Diane to come forward. I'm going to ask everyone to rise at the top of 150. I thought with the first Haftarah consolation, we had 7 weeks until Rosh Hashanah. We're already getting ready for Elul today.
Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei avotenu, shetechadesh aleinu et chachodesh hazeh l'tova v'livracha, v'titen lanu chayim arukim, chayim shel shalom, chayim shel tova, chayim shel bracha, chayim shel parnasa, Hayim shel hilut zatzamot, Hayim she'esh bahem yirat shamayim v'yirat hit, Hayim she'en bachem busha uchlima, Hayim shelo shevach Hayim she'tevanu havat Torah v'yirat shamayim, Hayim she'imalu mishalot libenu l'tova, Amen. Selah. Misha asani hisim lavotenu. V'ga'al otam yahavdut leherut. Hu yigal otanu b'karov. V'kabetz nidhenu. Ve'arba kanfot haaretz. Havehirim kol Yisrael. V'nomar Amen. Rosh Chodesh Elul yeh b'yom Shabbat Kodesh u'merachato b'yom Rishon haba aleinu v'al kol Yisrael l'tova.
The new month of Elul will begin on Friday night. May it hold blessing for us and for all the people.
Yichadshehu hakadosh baruch hu aleinu v'al kol amo beit Yisrael l'chaim ולשלום, לששון ולשמחה, ישועה ונחמה, ונאמר
Let's read those final lines in English. May the Holy One bless this new month for us and for all your people Israel, the house of Israel, with life and peace, joy and gladness, deliverance and consolation.
And let us say, Amen.
And we're seated as Peter leads us on page 151. Ashrei Yoshvei V'Tahal Od Yahalu Chasela Ashrei Ham Shakahalo Ashrei Ha'am Shadonai Eloha Tehillah LeDavid Aromim Kal Hai HaMelech Ravarchashim Kal Leolam Va'ed Becholim Avarkecha V'Hanashim Kal Leolam Va'ed Gadol Adonai Hu Meod V'Ligdolato En Keker Dor Yeshabach Ma'asecha Urotecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'Divrei Niflotecha Asicha V'Zuz Nortecha Yomeru Udunatecha Saprena Zecharav Tukaya Biu V'Tzidkatecha Yiranenu Kanun Brachum Adonai Erech Apayim Ugdol Chased Tov Adonai Lakol V'Rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav Yoducha Adonai Kol Ma'asecha V'Chasidecha Yivarucha Kavod Malchutcha Yomeru Ugvuratecha Yidaberu Hodia Livnei Hadam Gvurotav Ukvod Hadam Malchuto Malchutcha Malchut Kol Amim Umemshaltecha B'Chol Dor V'Ador Zomech Adonai L'Chol Hanoflim V'Zokech L'Chol HaKfufim Einei Chol Elecha Yivsaberu V'Ata Noten Lahem Et Oklam B'Ito Poteach Et Yadecha U'Maspia L'Chol Chai Ratzon Tzadik Adonai B'Chol Derachav V'Chasid B'Chol Ma'asav Karov Adonai L'Chol Torah V'Chol Asher Yivruhu V'Emet V'Tzon Yirei Av Yaseh V'Et Shavatam Yishma V'Yoshiem Shomer Adonai Et Kol Havav Et Kol Hashayim Yashmid Tehilat Adonai Yidaber Pi V'Yivarech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed V'Anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'ata Ve'ad Olam. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav Shemo levado, Hodo al eretz v'shamayim, v'yarem ke'er, tefillah lecho asiyah, b'nei Yisrael. Hallelujah, hallelujah. He is more than all we. Hallelujah,
ירוד ותקלו כולו מכבוד. היום Adonai Oslei Amo Yiten, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Hashalom. Unuho Yomar. Kilekachol natati lachem Torati atazohu et chaimni v'ma'asitim ba v'tom tefa Meyusha Terabeh Yadenoa Ve'onezivotecha Shalom Hashivein Elecha v'noshuva Kadesh Yameinu Ekev.
We remain standing as we turn back to the prayers, beginning with the prayer for our country on 148. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst.
Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May the citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony. Banish hatred and bigotry, to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country.
May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say,
Amen. The prayer for the state of Israel.
Avinu Shebashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha be'evrat chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Ocha v'amitcha l'rashea, Sarea v'yoatzea, V'taknem be'etzah tova milfanecha. Chazek et yedei meginei eretz kodshenu v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua v'ateret nitzachon ta'atrem. V'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam liyoshvea v'nomar
Amen. And now in English.
Oh, in English.
No, we usually do this.
Someone else is in English. Okay, cool.
And now in Russian, Spanish, and
Avinu Shebashamayim, Rock and Redeemer of the people of Israel, bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hand of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say amen.
Amen. And the prayer for peace. The nation will not threaten nation.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged. Amen. You're invited to be seated. Parashat Eikev is the parasha of ambivalence. The themes of ambivalence run through it, creating ambivalences over such binaries as privilege and hardship, promise and reality, blessing and overextension. It has the elaborate promise that God, since God made everything, even the sky, and certainly the entire earth, God may bestow any land God wishes to the Israelites, and does so all the way to Babylonia, and on the other side, all the way to the Nile. So the promise here is of such bounty of the land that the gift of the land is far more extensive than we thought. Even the rabbis are disturbed by this, and there is a rabbinic debate over whether that land can or even should be pursued outside of the territories allotted to the tribes, with the rabbis introducing a distinction between a commanded campaign to extend borders and individually instigated national campaigns. Some say the extension is kosher, and many of them say those personal campaigns are not kosher, including some of the campaigns of King David. Ambivalence. The entire land is yours. Is it really? Within the just 2 verses away from each other, we are commanded to eat and be satisfied in the new land. And just those 2 verses later, our being satisfied will lead to indolence and going astray. You will have everything you hope for, and you should. That's the whole point of this, and it's going to ruin you. Is it good or not? Or will it not ruin you? It's not clear. It will automatically ruin you. Maybe it won't. And of course, this verse is the basis of Birkat HaMazon, a biblically commanded prayer or blessing. And so the rabbis argue, what does it mean to be satisfied? Because you have to be satisfied in order to do the blessing. So what does it mean to be satisfied? So for some, they say it should be enough to be satisfied by a small, like egg-sized amount. And for other ones, they're saying, no, God's saying you have to be satisfied. Satisfied is you've eaten, so you couldn't possibly eat anymore. And then they argue about what would satisfaction mean to a poor person versus a privileged person. And they go back to the manna, which is mentioned here in Eikev as well. The manna itself is an ambivalence. Some of the rabbis think the manna is God nursing us, like in this nursling metaphor we have in Deuteronomy today, that the manna is like God, like we don't even have to like farm or do anything to get the manna. It's like this direct relationship with a gift directly from the mother God. It's nursing. And then some say, no, the whole point of the manna is that you learn that you thought you needed food to eat or bread to eat, needed sustenance, real food. No, you can live on like just the littlest bit. And so it's not supposed to be like this great closeness to God. It's supposed to be a form of training and deprivation. And a beautiful statement that he derives from the Talmud, the commentator Hizkuni says, and after all, we know there's a big difference in mentality between someone who is full, but there is more in their travel bag, and someone who knows there's always more in their travel bag. In other words, if someone has nothing more in their bag, but they may be full and not hungry, how can that compare to someone who may still be hungry, but they know they have endless amounts that they've been privileged with in their storehouses and in their travel bag? So what it would mean to be satisfied for a poor person, a rich person can't understand, because they know, I still got more. The poor person may be like, I'm not hungry at the moment, but am I satisfied when I don't know when my next meal is coming from? And that ambivalence runs through the parsha as well, very clearly, with such statements as the whole idea that you need to be circumcised of heart. That the problem is like, God wants us to go into the promised land and have everything we want. We got those great pomegranates and the great grapes, and we're not going to want for anything, and it's going to be just amazing. And at the same time, the parsha says it can't just be amazing because there's a problem here, which is you have to remember hardship, or else you'll close your heart to the widow and the poor and the downtrodden and all those Deuteronomic principles that we cherish. So then it's like the whole point is that this new generation goes in the land that didn't know hardship, but the only thing they really need to know is hardship. And so it's ambivalent over what do we want our lives to be like? Do we want them to be beautiful and full of blessing? Or is that actually a problem? So what is the goal and the problem are intertwined? And it's not, I kept wanting to use the word irony when I was preparing this, but it's not irony. It's really ambivalence. And it's not easy to reconcile. Maybe we're not supposed to fully reconcile the ambivalence that the Torah is expressing, that God is expressing. Eikev stresses that life in the land will be one largely free of hardship. But hardship is crucial. And it is crucial to somehow pass on the experience of hardship to the children, as the parasha says. We have the ambivalence of closeness and distance. Parsha says that we'll be closer than ever to God in the land because we get to keep all those we talked about them on Eco Shabbat. We get to keep all those ecologically based mitzvot that we didn't get to keep before, and that'll connect us to God. And we'll have this experience of closeness with God. Except weren't we closer to God in the wilderness when the Shekinah dwelled directly among us? And again, like back to the manna, when it's better when we were being nourished by God. So what does it mean that we will be closer to God there, and yet in a way distant? And of course, it's hard to be lost on us when we have the Haftarah, the ambivalence of homeland and exile. If you have no exile and you only have home, you will take it for granted and you won't even know what home means. But then, do we really wish for exile? We don't wish for exile. Don't say, well, then we should have some exile. A little bit of exile would be good for you. It's not good for you. We don't want exile. And so the very idea of homeland that Eikev is calling us to is providing an ambivalence. So I have two examples. I know we're going to be wholly inadequate for trying to relate this ambivalence perhaps to our own lives. And the first one is that I've heard from so many people this week, and I can't be sort of distant from the energy here of people dropping their kids off for college, right? And the roads closed off, and the parents delivering their children to independence. And it's interesting, the ambivalence I've heard from people, right? You probably, I mean, I haven't done it myself yet, so that's why I'm really not fit to speak about it. But what I hear from people who've gone through it is some of them are saying, I cried so hard. It was like the hardest thing since childbirth, you know, and all these kinds of things. And then some are like, well, especially those for whom it's not the first year, are like, you know, I wish I could get someone else to do it because I'm really busy and we were stuck in traffic and I'm a little bit beyond the age where I want to unload all that stuff in the heat. And then I run right into the worst traffic on the way home. So ambivalence about the distance and separation. And I wonder a little bit about the very experience of what it means to deliver a young person to independence at college. On the one hand, it looks like independence, right? Your parents aren't there and you're doing all these things on your own. Of course, I remember when my mother called me on the phone when I was at college and I was explaining to her that college is a lot more than going to class. And I'm getting more out of these other activities I'm engaging with instead of going to class. And then she reminded me that she's paying for it. And it just is straight out of Hosea, where Hosea says, you know, you think the wine and the grain and the oil and everything, it's either coming from your own efforts or coming from fertility gods. It's all coming from the real God. It's sort of like forgetting for the fact that parents are paying for college. And you're like, it's really me. And it's so independent, right? Because like, you know, mom's not making you food or dad's not making you food and all those kinds of things. But then I'm like, wait a second. If you're in a dorm, you're in a dorm and somehow magically the universe is assembled for you. The 1,000 people, probably most likely to be a friend of yours, right? Similar interests, similar age, similar life you've gone through. Wow, that's really hardship when someone just provided you with like 1,000 possible best friends, and then someone's making your meals and you have a safe place to sleep, but you have this illusion that you're independent. And it reminds me of this ambivalence of what our life will be like in the promised land. Are we really independent? Are we not? And the ambivalence over the fact that it's still all coming at you. You're all getting it from God. But it's really happening. And we think of chizkuni, which is you have to remember, there are two different experiences going on here. The experience of one who always has more in their bag that's coming out, and their opinion about it, and the one for whom there's nothing in their bag for the next meal unless they earn it. And so you think of those who attend university, attend college, and they're having a very different experience than everyone else. And many of us have taught students like this, that it's both heartbreaking, but also incredibly inspiring. You know, I remember the first time when I was an adjunct, and I had a student missing class. I asked a student, you're not Jewish, why are you taking this course on Judaism and Christianity and so on? And they said, it's the only one that fits between my shifts at Jiffy Lube. And if I don't have my shift, and if I get sick and I don't attend my shift, then I can't pay my rent. So we have two different experiences, one of which is it's like us in the promised land. Oh, it's all through our own efforts and everything's provided. And the grapes and pomegranates are so great, and the land it's yielding its produce. And we forget when we're kind of privileged or spoiled that it's really someone's providing this. This is coming from somewhere. And yet there are others who are having the experience, which is, I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel it's coming from somewhere, because unless I work for it, and maybe I'm not able to do that, or I take out loans for it, I literally don't have that safe environment of the dorm room, of the cafeteria, of 1,000 friends just waiting to talk to me about what music I listen to. So I think of the ambiguities, the ambivalences and whether it's independence, whether it's not independence, whether we want our children to have hardship so they have compassion and they have real life experience, they build resilience, or whether don't I want for them to have safety, refuge, security, because it is hard sometimes to experience blessing when there's nothing in the bag. And I have one other example. It's shorter. It goes like this. It's our relationship to God. The Parsha and the ambivalence in the Parsha reminds me of so often when I take those who are converting to Judaism to the mikvah. I sit there with Rabbi Adler, Rabbi Stella, Rabbi Daberson, and we ask them, what is your favorite thing that drew you to Judaism? And I know I've mentioned this before from the pulpit, so forgive me, but it's so moving. Many of them say, it gives you a direct relationship to God. I'm not going through I'm not going through an altar site, I'm not going through an intermediary. And I have a direct relationship to God. And that is the gift of being in the promised land. When you go into the promised land, there won't be a Moshe, there won't be a manna, it will be beautiful. And you will be directly in relationship to God through working the land and keeping mitzvot and doing it with all your heart. And yet, I'm ambivalent about that for us all, because how many of us have this access to, you are always in direct relationship with God. And yet people say, yeah, I don't believe in God. I don't feel God. With the gift of having no intermediary, for the gift of, in a sense, all of us being given that blessing of, it's all God. You're always in relationship with God. That's the gift I'm giving you in the promised land. And yet so many people then feel it, but then I don't feel it. I haven't done a kid's version of the sermon in a long time, and I feel bad about it, and my kids have reminded me, and so I'm going to do my best to do the kids version right now. It's not going to be very good. So I don't know how to put all this. So I'm going to say to the kids who are watching, Judaism has a very hard teaching, which is you can feel God everywhere and at all times. You can feel God playing, I don't know, exploding kittens. For those who know, may a blessing be upon you. Playing exploding kittens with your family, just sitting and laughing at something you're streaming. And there's just a presence of God flowing through you, just playing ball outside, just planting a plant, just gardening. We are so lucky that like at every moment, it's all God all the time. But we also know that that gift comes with a string attached, which is sometimes it makes it all the more harder to feel God directly in our lives. That's the Jewish gift and the Jewish challenge. Shabbat Shalom. The Musaf service begins on page 155. I invite you to stand at this time.
Yikadal veikadash meraba. Ve'omadi frafkute ve'amlich mahute ve'chel. U'vayedel Yisrael. Ve'odal Yisman kariv ve'meru. Amen. Yehish meraba mevora. Le'olam lo me'almaya. V'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kudesha v'yidu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata v'shechata v'nefemata v'amiram v'alma v'yimru. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Koneh Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevi Goel Lifnei B'neihem Leman Shemo v'Ahava. Chazer V'Ged Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Choked Sarah. Hagibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Metim Atarav Le'Yoshia Mechaker Mechaye Metim V'Rafim Somer Noflim V'Rofer Kolim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shenei Yafot Michal Mochav Bal Geburot U'Midol Melech Melech Nevi U'Mekayem U'Masmiach Yeshua Ne'eman atah l'chachayot mitim. Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye hametim.
157.
Ha'aritzecha v'na'atisha v'sosiya sarvei kodesh Amatishim shivah kodesh Kakadu ayam v'yecha v'karazel ze'be'alma Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzvaot Ne'lo ha'aretz ki'omo. Kevodo male male olam einekom kevodo. Kevodo male male olam einekom kevodo. Kevodo male male olam Mesharta shoalim shoalim zelazeh Einekom kevodo, Mesharta shoalim shoalim zelazeh Einekom kevodo. Le'omatam baruch yomeru Baruch Adonai Min kama
Amen. 158 and forward.
Ikadove Kadashi Meraba, Belmandi Valpurte, Velmif Makute, Bechaikonu Biomefonu, Fede Kobe Israel, Bagalau Bismankari Veimaru, Amen. Iparach Vishtabach, Vipar Vitraman Vitnase, Vitadar Vitala, Vitalas Medicudisha, Leilami Fobir Fata Vishata, Tushbefata Venakamata, Damiran Velma Veimaru. Amen. Ikabat Slot Honu Valuhon, Dechol Israel, Kadam Avulhon, Divishmaya Veimaru. Amen. Yehi Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Yisrael Ve'yimeru. Amen. V'oseh Shalom B'mromav V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Yisrael Ve'yimeru. Amen.
Jordan comes forward to lead Ein Eloheinu on 182, and then Sonia will be back for 183.
Ein Eloheinu, Ein Kemokeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mikeloheinu. K5. What does it want to do? Okay.
We may be seated for a moment. On this Shabbat, Beth Israel congregation remembers, among others, the Yortzites of Ruth Abelson and Eunice Cook, Mark Donis, Shirley Finkel, Michael Foster, Ann Gare, Rose Ginsburg, Samuel Joff, Daniel Greenberg, Martin Greenberg, Max Hallman, Florence Karch, Mike Kachin, Edwin Lakin, Esther Lamed, Mark Lieberman, here on the first year Yortzeit from Mark, brother of Victor Lieberman. Eleanor Biddle-Lloyd, Dorothy Lusky, Herman Lusky, Sophie Mortis, Henry Phillips, Hannah Ross, Joyce Siegel-Schuster, Elizabeth Carol Schwartz, Irving Simon, Jeanette Teller, and Alexander Mark Wayman, as we continue to say Kaddish. For Natalie Scher, Susan Feingold Schultz, Judith Cashton, Lorraine Sherman, Michael Adams, Leona Leon, Phyllis Werbel, Fanchen Lessing, Carol Feinerman, David Fallman, Bruce Stahl, Carol Amster, Gary Joseph Ullman, Paul Ernest Phillips,
Leslie Garber-Matthews, Raisa Levinskaya, Alice Cohen, Toby Barben Rothaus, Vivian Perlstein, Marty Lindenauer, and Bonnie Rosenberg. And for all those for whom we are saying the Kaddish, if you are reciting today, please rise. Recite with me on page 184. Yikadal v'yikadash shmei Rabbah, v'yalmad yivrat pirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, b'agalah v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah v'barach v'olam olam Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yinaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kodeshah le'elam min kol birchata shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav u'yaseh shalom Aleinu v'Yakol Yisrael Imru. May their memories continue to bring blessings to this world. I just want to say that I was kind of saying to Meg before the service started and some of the folks who were here that I just had this feeling because of a confluence of factors which will go nameless. I just thought it was going to be a 25-person day. And when I look around and I see the congregation extending all the way back, I want to tell you how much it means to me personally that people made a decision to show up today. And for those who are showing up there on Zoom and streaming too, so that I know that like I get to share Torah with you. Many people say, I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of going to services. And sometimes I want to say to them, do you know what other people get out of you going to services? You know, you're giving a gift when you make community. So I want to say to everyone, I've been looking around and noticing who you are. You gave me a gift by coming. I suspect you gave many others a gift. Sometimes even without speaking and just by who you are. Thank you for making that choice today. My honor to bring up Deborah Ball for the announcements.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. I'd like to ask that we all turn back to page 146 in the Siddur. Really picking up from what you just said, Rabbi Kane, I think when I come here and I think of all of you on Zoom and all the people I see here, I just feel like this is such a special place and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to make Shabbat with all of you.
Yeah, I'll get it. Thank you.
Like I was saying, it's a very special place, Beth Israel. And thank you, Rav Nadav, for what you just said. And I thought we might say the blessing for our congregation together. If you'll read with me, may the blessings of heaven, can you join me? Kindness and compassion, long life.
Page 148.
148. Let's start again. I think you couldn't hear me initially, sorry. May the blessings of heaven, kindness and compassion, long life, ample well-being, and healthy children be granted to all members of this congregation. May the sovereign of the universe bless you, adding to your days and your years. May you be spared all the stress and disease. May our be your help at all times. And let us say, amen. And when we do face troubles, we know that we have one another to support each other and to reach out. So please know that we're all here for one another. A few announcements this week. First, I'd like to begin by welcoming Jerry Sorokin, who's sitting right over there. Maybe you could wave. Jerry, as many of you know, or most of you know, is our new executive director. We're incredibly excited to have Jerry with us. And we will have on September 10th, as I wrote yesterday, a welcoming of Jerry at Shabbat morning services. That is also the first day that we'll be using our new Sidurim, Lev Shalem. So it'll be a very special Shabbat. I hope that many of you will be able to join in person and on Zoom. And also Kabbalat Shabbat that same week, September 9th, will be Motown Shabbat and will also be an opportunity for people to meet Jerry and to formally welcome him. But in the meantime, you can welcome him at Kiddush, and we're just so glad that you're with us. Shabbat Shalom to you. A few other announcements. Monday, August 22nd at 4 o'clock, Rabbi Daberson will be continuing with Talmud study on Zoom. You can get the information from our website. Again, you don't need to have an intimate knowledge of Hebrew to join this. The texts are read in Hebrew, but the discussions are in English.
A week from this next weekend, Friday, August 26th at 5:30, we have our Back from Summer barbecue. You can register on the website. There's a great menu. There's a bounce house. It looks like you could go in the bounce house too, as well as children, but not till 6:15. So don't come at 5:30 if you want to go in the bounce house. Services will be at 7 o'clock in the courtyard. Come and celebrate together coming back from the summer. A week from tomorrow, Sunday, August 28th, from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., Beth Israel will be conducting the blood drive, which we haven't been able to do for a few years. It's really an important kind of gift if you're able to donate blood. Each donation of blood can save up to 3 lives. So if you can do that, or if you could ask a friend to join, or if you can help out, please join this effort. You can go after Shabbat, you can go to redcrossblood.org and enter BIC13 in the Find a Blood Drive box, and you'll be able to sign up there. You can remember that by thinking of the 13 attributes of God. Our vaccination policy, I do need to alert you, is being suspended for that day in order to get the most possible donations, but everyone will be required to wear masks. A couple of other small things, not small, but membership forms for the coming year, registration for the religious school, and Lev Shalem donation forms are available through our website. Please contact the office if you're having any trouble accessing any of those. And just again, the special Shabbat where we'll be welcoming Jerry Sorokin and using our new prayer books for the first time will be the weekend of September 9th. Shabbat Shalom. Yes, Diane?
I'd just like to say recently the blood drive that number one, we are still needing a good number of donors, so please spread the word. And the other thing is that although we are suspending the vaccination policy, we're using both social halls this year, which means that people will be very spread out while they're donating. So I've had 1 or 2 people express concern because, the vaccination policy, most of the people who are donating and all of the workers are in fact vaccinated, but we don't know whether someone might want to walk in to donate, and we're not going to prohibit that. But we will be extra spread out to follow good precautions.
And Diane, thank you for all of your work to lead this effort. And you're right, we actually still need 36, as of yesterday, we still need 36 more donors, which is double high. So I hope that you can find a way to join or invite others to join the effort. Thank you, Diane. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
I just want to let everyone know to keep up to date with the emails about the fact that the family, our refugee family that has been, in a sense, adopted by Jewish organizations here in Ann Arbor has arrived, and the team, including members of Beth Israel and other organizations working together to get them settled. So stay abreast for things that might be needed. And as that team gives us information that we should email out, we'll be putting in announcements so that we can help in the appropriate way. Finally, as you may already well know, that the community lost a pillar of the Ann Arbor and actually the national North American Jewish community this week in the passing of Harlene Appelman. Our deepest condolences go out to Henry and to their entire extended family. They're already taking visitors because the funeral will be on Tuesday, and there are reasons for that. So there's an email that has the visitation hours and address already. And then the funeral will be on Tuesday here in the sanctuary at 1 p.m. It'll also be streamed on YouTube, and there will also be a Zoom stream as well going on. Following the funeral at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, we will be doing interment at Washtenong, and then following that, returning to the house at approximately 4 p.m. for Shiva, including a Mincha Shiva Minyan on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we will have at 7 p.m. also at the house a Shiva Minyan, and that will be combined. That will be the Beth Israel Minyan for that night, for Wednesday night. Many people have asked about food, and so that there have been, as appropriate to our station, we have many communities that Harlene intersected with and inspired, and Henry and Harlene building together. So different organizations are sending food at different times, and that includes us. And so if you want to participate in the platters that we are providing, on our website, if you click on the word donate, you can get a drop-down list if you're logged in. And one of the many things on the drop-down list is the Shiva Fund. And so obviously we're purchasing the platters no matter what, but if you would like to help provide them, we would be grateful. And the list of the names of those who are participating and providing food in that way will be sent and provided to the family. If you have any questions, let me know, but there's an email that Beth, I know, is going to send out probably tomorrow that will repeat all of the information that's already been provided and provide additional information. May the family find comfort in this lead up and in following the funeral. With that, Sonia, I know it was a little bit of delay. Would you lead Adon Olam for us? Come on up. Adon Olam, page 187.
Adon Olam asher malach v'terech v'nasah v'sokol hazaymer shemo yikra v'tohachu levav v'nokara v'ruach Hallelujah,
Let's finish really strong. Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you back there for Kiddush.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Sue, how's the new place? Shabbat Shalom.